part one of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call
the second paradigm. But in order to make sense of any of this, we have to first start with
what everyone else is doing.
You're on your deathbed, looking back at your life, thinking back on your biggest regrets.
Blah, blah, blah. We've heard the same story a dozen times.
We're stuck on a never-ending treadmill of work, chasing money that we already know won't make us any happier. We're trying the new diet, the new emotional optimization hack, the new business strategy to 10x our side gig and quit our day job. But we all know where this story ends. Every experience we've ever had of chasing a material or emotional desire always led to this odd, hollow disappointment. Which is why we go to conferences or watch inspirational YouTube videos telling us to imagine the day we die to motivate us to try something new.
But why don't we actually do anything different? Not just buy a new treadmill and call it a day. No, something really different. Really, what's stopping us?
If you look close enough, the answer's annoyingly simple. We don't think we can.
So now what?
Well, now we go deeper. We live in a world of logic, and though it's helped us to create the very world we live in, that logic is limited. Everything we've ever experienced is carefully cataloged in this massive brain of ours, and we make rational, practical decisions based on our lifetime of experience.
Our life is logical.
But our logic is limited, because that experience is limited. We've never seen ourselves do or be anything outside of this path that's been laid out for us. We grow up, go to school, get a job, work for money, strive for happiness, and when we imagine doing anything else at all we see is
uncertainty.
Our brain sees that different, uncertain future, runs it against our lifetime of experience, and comes up short. I don't have that on file, and since I don't have that on file, let's just assume it's
certain doom.
In Logic OS, anything outside of our experience is uncertainty, and uncertainty is certain doom. We don't do anything different with our lives because our logic can only see those big, deathbed-changing leaps as certain doom. Here's the hard part, and the weird part. Even our future is uncertain. We all have a fog of uncertainty somewhere out in the distance. It may be a few days when that next bill comes due, or it might be a few years into the future when that rift in a marriage might just finally tear it apart. We're not just scared of those big leaps.
We're scared of tomorrow.
What we're already doing here, Logic OS, is looking for certainty to push off that lingering feeling of certain doom. It's not like we've ever actually been there before, to this certain doom. We've always found a way to get by. It might not have been what we imagined or wanted, but we always found a way. Still, even when we do find a way forward, that certain doom just moves a few months, weeks, or days out into the future. And then we get back to figuring out how to escape its grips once again. That treadmill is more than just something we do here. It's a big game we play with ourselves, with Logic OS, to learn more, be more, do more, have more, to move that feeling of certain doom just a bit further down the line. For some of us, though, that game ends when that one fateful day hits us across the head. My mom passed away in 2011, and I was never the same.
My mom had a stroke in 2011, and it changed everything.
Calamity strikes, and that deathbed isn't just some metaphor we heard someone share on some stage.
Suddenly, it's real.
We're thrown off the treadmill, face flat on the ground, and we realize that there's no escaping uncertainty. After what's so often months with detached, glared-over eyes, we're left with that big midlife crisis feeling.
There has to be something more to life than this.
This is the space where logic becomes useless. When calamity strikes, our logic has no experience to reference. Logic OS has no answers for us.
Suddenly, it's just what we do here isn't a good enough reason to keep going. If life really can't be controlled, what am I even doing? Isn't there something more to this life than ensuring my safety and escaping certain doom?
To find the answer, We have to be willing to go head first into the big mysteries of life. And we have to realize that asking these big questions doesn't make you crazy. It just makes you
brave.
Now, before you think you've heard this all before, we're not here to talk about some big secret that has to be discovered and unlocked with decades of spiritual training. Everything we're about to share already exists in your experience today, no matter who you are or what you've been doing in this life. You won't find what we're about to share under #spirituality on social media. Often, what we find there is just more things to do to feel better, to be a good person, and to get ahead.
No, this is something different. There's nothing more that you have to do, to learn, to strive for, or to figure out. This is profoundly simple. It's already here, right within your experience. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's anything short of a miracle.
Where this journey goes is into a new human operating system that's far more precise, far more fulfilling, and far more profound than logic alone. And again, it's all right here, already within your experience. This is intuitionOS.
This is the second paradigm.
This is part 2 of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call the second paradigm. Here's where we left off.
There must be more to life than this.
Is there?
To find the answer, all we have to do is look inside. The force within you.
There's a force within you, within all of us, that feels almost unexplainable. It moves you in the weirdest of directions that defy all logic.
You have to quit this job. You have to leave this relationship. You have to move to a new city.
Or even simpler, read this book, watch this video, send this person a message.
Go, leap.
There's nothing logical about this force within us, and that's exactly why most of us ignore it.
I can't leave this job. I have bills to pay. My side job doesn't make enough money yet. I'm stuck to this lease, shackled by this mortgage. I can't
leave this relationship. I don't know who I'd be without them, and I don't know that anyone would ever love me again if I left. I can't move to a new city. My job is here. My friends are here. My everything is here. It just doesn't make sense. I can't, at least not yet. But no matter how much we push back on it, this force is relentless. It never gives up, and it holds steady in its requests of us. We can try to ignore it, but we can never get rid of it.
Go, leap.
What is this force within us, and where does it come from? If we step outside of Logic OS for a moment and think about these weird feelings that we've all had.
How do we make sense of it?
Truth be told, we tend to overcomplicate things. We dive into esoteric texts. We look for the answers in a new meditation practice or by searching how to wake up on Google.
And where does that get us?
Often, all we end up with is a new item on the to-do list. We still have to make money. We still have to ensure our survival, be a good person, and avoid certain doom. Just now, we have some new spiritual practices to add to the list.
Our logic wants to be sure that we're doing it right, feeling it right, and that we aren't just dangerously crazy. So we look out there to make sense of what's already happening right here in our own experience. But if we take away all the words, all the ideas, and all the dogma, we're still left with this feeling within us that asks us to defy logic and take bold leaps into uncertainty, to leave the things that feel off and start a new path into something far less predictable.
We can try to make sense of it as God, energy, spirit guides, or a slew of other things, but there's a real experience underneath all the words. It's this feeling that we can't ever shake that calls us forward into something entirely new and uncertain.
That's the experience we're diving into here.
We can write it off as crazy or unscientific or an unsolvable mystery, but that doesn't make it go away. It's something real. At least in our own experience, it is.
So what is it? What is this force within us? And can it be understood?
This is intuitionOS.
This is the second paradigm. No one does it better. This is part 3 of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call the second paradigm. Here's where we left off.
There's a force within us that compels us into uncertainty and defies all logic. What is this force? Can it be understood?
Soul and intuition.
If we're going to use words with as much baggage as soul or intuition, we have to cut away all the riffraff and talk about what we really mean when we use them. This force within us defies logic.
That's a bigger statement than you might first think.
Every single experience we have in our lives has contributed to that logic. Everything we've taken in through our 5 senses is categorized, sorted, and distilled down into that mental powerhouse.
But this force within us defies logic.
That also means it defies our own experience.
It asks us to leave when our experience says to stay, and it asks us to stay when our experience says to leave.
It's as if there's a completely different source of information here, coming through a very different neural pathway. We could use any words here, and the experience wouldn't change.
We're not talking about old religious texts or woo-woo practices from the fringes of Instagram. We're talking about a very real experience that everyone has.
There's something within us that defies our entire body of experience and compels us to take uncertain leaps into something new. But if we were to use words, it's really not that crazy to say that if there's a piece of us that somehow exists outside of the entire body of experience we have access to, we could call it
soul.
And this soul, it nudges us into the unknown through these odd feelings that we could call
intuition.
After all, what other words could we use to describe something so profound? We're being nudged into uncertainty, out into what looks like it could only be certain doom. And somehow, this feeling, this intuition, leads us in directions that benefit our lives, bring greater fulfillment, and teach us huge lessons about reality.
Look at any person who's doing something they truly love, and you'll find that it started with a story of an uncertain and terrifying leap of faith.
It defied logic. It didn't make sense, but they did it anyway.
Why?
A feeling. Something, somewhere along the line, convinced them to defy their entire body of experience and step into the unknown. There's no way to avoid that feeling of certain doom. It's all that our current operating system can give us. LogicOS only has access to our experiences.
So why and how did they manage to do something else?
Ask these same people, and the answer is often something like work hard, work smart, and keep going until you get lucky. But what you'll rarely hear is far more profound than hard work. They defied their operating system. The way of being we all agreed upon is true. They looked certain doom in the eyes and said, "I don't believe you." Then they walked straight into that fire and somehow made it to the other side unharmed.
There, on the other side of certain doom, they found a whole new life for themselves. They trusted a feeling over logic and didn't die.
That should be breaking news all over the world. Man takes a logical leap into certain doom and makes it out alive. No, even more, makes it out happier and more fulfilled.
But it isn't breaking news. We hardly even realize it's happening. We hardly even realize that an entirely new operating system is coming online for humanity, and only a few people have stumbled upon it, and even fewer realize what it is. We've discovered our intuition to be true and valid, and in that, we've also proved that our logic has been wrong all along.
As this moves further into the territory of pseudoscientific snake oil by the minute, we're inevitably going to lose some of you here.
That's okay.
But before we do, think back to a moment where you tested this feeling within you against reality. Have you ever ignored the loud warnings of LogicOS and listened to your intuition? Did you make it out alive?
Or even far more likely, have you ever not listened to your intuition and come to regret it? Even in the little things, like to stay away from that person. Look, they're smiling, they're bright, they're happy, they're smart, and come to find out later, all of it was a bit of a charade to mask those narcissistic tendencies, and on comes a long road of pain and heartbreak.
Or you brush aside that weird feeling to buy a stock, buy gold, buy silver, buy something, and you watch it shoot up in value just days or weeks later.
Intuition is so often annoyingly spot on.
How can this unknown feeling be more precise than our entire life's experience in logic? And if it's actually true, if it actually works, how could we possibly see this force within us as anything other than access to something outside of that lived experience? At the second paradigm, we call this force
Intuition.
And we call this something else
Soul.
It's nothing new to learn, nothing overly complicated to understand, just new words for a very familiar experience.
This is intuitionOS.
This is the second paradigm. Trusting yourself. This is part 4 of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call the second paradigm. Here's where we left off.
When we find the courage to look certain doom in the eyes, we're finding the courage to defy logic. We use our intuition to access something outside of our lived experience, soul. But soul is not a mystery. It's just underused.
Every one of those feelings we've ever had asked us to leave the comforts of our certainty. Yes. But at times that feeling just asked us to leave a circumstance that just wasn't serving us anymore.
That job that was sucking the life out of us more every day, that relationship that was so unhealthy that even our friends knew it probably wouldn't last much longer, or that city that only brought us dead end after dead end, no matter how much we tried to make something work.
At some point, it didn't matter how much we wanted to stick around or how much sense it made to stay. The pain just got too unbearable, and it seemed like there was no amount of effort that could make it any better.
Sometimes we feel like we're forced to change, like we don't have any other choice. Sometimes it gets so painful being where we're at that the most logical decision is to defy logic and walk into the flames.
And sometimes that's true. But every time that feeling comes in far in advance, we always know far before we ever felt forced to make that change, that a change was coming.
Soul and intuition aren't mysteries. They're something we're already familiar with. It's that feeling far in advance, far before we're forced to make a change, that gives us a little heads up and a nudge in the right direction. So what happens if we listen to that feeling before we're forced to?
Well, the same thing that happens eventually anyway, just without all the sloppy pain spewed all over the final chapter. This feeling always gave us a heads up and always nudged us in the right direction.
Trusting our soul and listening to our intuition is really just making those decisions a little bit earlier and making those transitions a little smoother. It's trusting that feeling even before it makes sense or before things have to get so bad that we take the leap anyway.
But what many people are finding all around the world is that their intuition is good for far more than just avoiding pain. It sets us up for unique opportunities for growth and insight, too. It gives us a life worth living, one that's deeply fulfilling, beyond words. There's nothing more exhilarating than looking certain doom in the eyes time and time again and saying, I don't believe you, because I trust this feeling. I trust myself to overcome and to find a new life on the other side of this wall of flames.
We leap for no reason beyond trusting this feeling, trusting our intuition, trusting soul.
And it's as if suddenly life has a purpose, beyond avoiding certain doom on endless treadmills of pain and hardship.
Suddenly we come alive.
We realize there is more to life than just that endless treadmill. This feeling is actually quite familiar in other ways too. It's something that's been described for a long time. We came here for something larger. Our intuition connects us to soul, maybe even to a higher power. After all, what other force could possibly be behind such wisdom that defies logic, guides us through certain doom, and creates deep feelings of exhilaration and fulfillment along the way? Our more ancient traditions point to a God and rules for existence, but this isn't about some rule set, right and wrong, or eternal punishment. It's about an experience that's being had right now by everyone. It's that series of little nudges that drastically changes the entire experience of life.
It's soul.
Weirdly, for those who consistently trust this unknown force within them, they have this experience of becoming more of themselves, more liberated, more expressed. It's as if we were never meant to be held captive within this prison of managing our uncertainty. It's as if, all along, it's been little more than a nasty side effect of intuitionOS. It's as if who we truly are lies in that odd, illogical feeling, underneath the manic and frantic scramble of our minds to create as much certainty as we can throughout our imaginary ideas of money, wealth, career. All things we made up for ourselves, a treadmill we put ourselves on. It's as if we're only now, just beginning to find our way out of this self-made prison of thought and back to this thing we truly are, underneath it.
Is it crazy to say that our intuition, this force within us, leads us back to who we actually are? Is it crazy to say we have a soul and that we're connected to something larger? It seems even crazier to say that we're not, that all we are is this endless mental scramble to avoid uncertainty and ensure our survival. Soul is not a mystery, it's just underused.
We hold on for dear life to our fears and misconceptions about this world, and we give up the things that bring us deep fulfillment and purpose.
For what?
Maybe this is what all those ancient traditions of old have been pointing us toward. Maybe it was never meant to be a set of rules at all, just passed down wisdom, to trust this force within us that defies the logic of our own creation and leads us to who we truly are underneath it. Still, if we're going to go any further down this path of exploration, we have to acknowledge a really big question. If soul and intuition is who we truly are, what's all this other stuff?
Why do I doubt myself? Why do I scramble to ensure my safety? Why do I fear what's uncertain in the first place?
Well, no different than soul or intuition, this too can be understood through our own experience. This is intuitionOS.
This is the second paradigm.
Makes so much sense.
This is part 5 of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call the second paradigm. Here's where we left off.
Soul and intuition aren't mysteries. They're just underused. We have this feeling within us that leads us to fulfillment, exhilaration, and to deep feelings of becoming more of ourselves, liberated from our self-made prisons of logic. And we're at a bit of a weird question. If soul and intuition is who we truly are, what's all this other stuff?
You're also in a body.
This is a bit of a weird, no-brainer idea, but think about it. If this feeling within us is our soul, we're clearly also more than just a soul. Our mind, our record of experience, it's held in our body.
This is an old idea. We are a soul in a body.
But it's not just dogma or belief for belief's sake. It's describing an experience. Our body is full of urges that pull us in dozens of directions all before lunch. Depending on our mood, our thoughts are different. Depending on the weather, what's in our inbox, or on our shiny rectangles, our mood is different. And our mind is just an extension of these odd feelings. We're a biological hodgepodge of conflicting primal urges mixed with complicated webs of thought. Then, there's this consistent feeling that nudges us in useful directions in life and leads us on a path of discovering who we are underneath everything else.
We can draw this clean line between body and soul. Even if we see it all as just one big metaphor, it clearly describes the experience. Our soul tells us we're going to be okay. our body freaks out. It turns out we were okay. Our soul tells us to leave this circumstance and enter the unknown. Our body freaks out. It turns out our life is more thrilling and we're more fulfilled on the other side.
So let's roll with it. Let's take everything we've explored and use this clean line between body and soul to make sense of it all. You're in a body, programmed with everything you've ever experienced, every thought, belief, trauma, every twist and turn, and everything in between. We spend a lot of our time in this world trying to manage these thoughts and soothe these emotions, but what if we're just listening to the wrong piece of us? The body goes through emotional swings and drives forward with manic logic. But no matter how hard we might try to think and figure it all out, in truth, that body of experience can only be fixed through an experience of something else. What's outside of that experience? What's the thing compelling us into the unknown?
Soul. You are a body and a soul.
One is everything you have been, and everything you've learned about what was here before you. The other is everything you're becoming, and everything you're meant to be.
Isn't it all so simple?
It's not overly woo. There's nothing overly complicated here. It's just the experience, put to words. Old ideas, from ancient traditions to modern spiritual thinking. If intuition is this force within us, our body is the thing we're bringing that force into. It's the piece of us that's scared, confused, and running on an outdated operating system that's locked us away in certainty for an illusion of safety. Now, here's where this gets really interesting, really quickly.
When we listen to our intuition, we're choosing to trust our soul over our body's entire life experience.
It's terrifying.
But it doesn't stop there. We then physically live the consequences of that choice. Remember, our body is learning through its experience. So if our intuition is real, if it's trustworthy, like it's been so many times before, then our body is going to have to see that. We're going to learn really quickly whether or not that decision pays off. If it does, if this force is worth trusting, then our body slowly gets on board with this force. Our body learns to trust our soul to take the reins of our life decisions. In a weird way, our body slowly becomes our soul. Our body makes decisions as our soul from our intuition. It's all one and the same. Eventually, that force becomes the way we make decisions and the only way we make decisions.
That's so radically different from how we did things before, we could call it a new operating system. This is intuitionOS, a new operating system quickly coming online in the population. When we learn that we're a soul and we have the kind of access to wisdom that we do, there's no going back to faulty logic. We don't need to, because now there's something that works even better.
This is intuitionOS.
This is the second paradigm.
Welcome home.
This is part 6 of a 6-part series on intuition as an operating system, what we call the second paradigm. Here's where we left off.
Your intuition connects you to soul, to a sort of higher power that guides decision-making toward the ideal. It's less painful, far smoother, and surprisingly fulfilling. But you're also in a body. This body is the sum of your life's experiences, all wrapped up in a logical framework that helps you navigate your life. When you listen to your intuition, your body learns something new through that new experience. Over time, you become that soul. You could even say you become the thing you were always meant to be.
But what's next? How does this all work in practice?
Letting everything break.
When you know you're a body and a soul, life gets really simple. You trust that inner feeling and watch your body freak out. When your body sees that everything's okay on the other side, you grow and learn to trust that feeling even more. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy or comfortable. Often, it's not.
4 years ago, David started channeling. All of these ideas have come through this channeling phenomena from a being named B. It's weird, it's unscientific, it's out there, no doubt, but it's also brought a really unique perspective that describes the experience of living this intuitive life surprisingly well. In March of 2020, David and Bea worked on a document called The True Power of Peace, and a few months later, they brought through a doc called The True Meaning of Self-Love. These docs go hand in hand as a sort of inner technology to be able to withstand the really uncomfortable aspects of trusting intuition and soul.
It goes something like this. Your goal isn't to be blissful or perfect in your thoughts and beliefs, just to find your way toward peace to make your decisions. Peace is where your soul lives. And when you're freaking out, settle back and nurture your body through its uncertainty. That's self-love. It's so simple and doesn't require us to be any different than we already are. It really just reminds us of the experience we're already having. Our soul knows we're safe, or we wouldn't be feeling the nudge into the unknown in the first place. Our body can't know we're safe because it's never experienced it before. The truer truth, time and time again, is that we're going to be okay, even when it's terrifying. Peace is the closest emotion we have to that feeling, and fortunately, it's also sustainable. Bliss isn't sustainable. Bliss and joy requires that our experience right now be better than our current emotional baseline. Things would have to get better and better and better always, with no dips, no challenges, no hardship.
No one's life does that.
But peace can be found when we're most terrified and when we're most manic and trying to get somewhere. Peace is always there.
And right next to peace?
It's that feeling that's always nudging us toward the ideal. It's soul. Along the way, we get to nurture our body through its uncertainty. It's not our body's fault that it's never experienced what's coming. It's not our fault that we're scared. Instead of trying to fix ourselves, thought and belief work our wrongness away or heal endless trauma to try to alleviate that discomfort. All we really need to do is settle back into that inevitable discomfort, breathe, and nurture our body through its uncertainty, back toward the closest thing we have to peace in the moment. Peace is our ideal emotional trajectory, and self-love is a tool to help us get there.
In peace, we find our truth, our knowing, and that force within us that calls us forward with unimaginable precision, smoothness, and grace.
Still, what happens next may be one of the hardest pieces of life on Earth, letting it all break. Your body will scramble and want to figure it all out. It's inevitable. Your soul will tell you that there's far less to do than you think. Listen to your soul, feel the discomfort, and let everything you thought was real, everything you thought was necessary, break. After a decade of asking the big questions and 4 years of living life more and more intuitively by the day, we can tell you, we've yet to meet this certain doom.
We're not dead yet.
No, we're very much alive. There's purpose here. There's fulfillment here. There's precision here.
And despite what so many spiritual ideas seem to tell us, soul can really make sense. This life, fully trusting this inner force, this is intuitionOS.
And it's of our deepest belief that it's not only the most precise decision-making force in existence, it's also the inevitable direction of our species. Not because it's holier, or because an angry higher power demands it.
No, just because it works better. So to all of those taking a bold stand for intuition in your own life, please know you're far from crazy.
In our eyes, you're on the cutting edge.
And to all of those on the verge of that terrifying leap into something new, called only by an inner force you can't explain, we see you. And we promise there's life on the other side. Keep going, keep trusting, and welcome home. Welcome to the second paradigm.